Welcome into the I-80 Boys College Football Podcast. As always, I'm your host, old Christian Hunt, and that guy over there is...
It's Chris Vaca, better known as the better looking one between us two. But hey, here we are. No, Christian, what's up, man? What's good? How's it been? How's your week going so far, buddy?
So far can't complain. Looking out on the horizon, it's supposed to be, 90-something degrees next week?
Damn, dude.
Not looking forward to that.
Jesus.
Yeah, and they say, after that, it'll probably be 50 degrees.
I know. That's why I said you're going to get that cold front in here, and now it's going to be super, super cold out, man. It's actually been really nice so far this week. It's been in the 70s, so loving the weather, though, man. But it is football weather, as we know. Can't hate on that, man. It was a good slate of games this last week, Christian. There was a ton of ranked teams playing. What were your thoughts, just to kind of wrap up on last week? I mean, just as far as the slate of games goes, what'd you think?
I thought obviously ton of really good games last week, and then there was kind of some duds in there too. I mean, that Penn State Iowa game, that kind of was anemic in a lot of ways. Yeah. Then you kind of jump back and forth between the Pac-12 and some of the games that we saw there. I mean, you look at Utah and UCLA. That was depending on who you are, that was a pretty good game, right?
Yeah.
Oregon State, Washington State was a shootout. Washington State obviously held on, and of course, when you bet against Washington State, they're gonna disappoint you. But yeah, man, I thought it was a good week, and then you obviously you got everything with Colorado and all of that mess over there, and they're keeping receipts, and we'll see what happens this week, man.
Yeah, we will find out about them, Christian. Well, what do you want to talk about first here, Christian? What matchup do you want to start off with, man? And we'll probably get into it here.
We'll keep it in the Pac-12, Chris. Why don't we get into a little bit of Oregon State versus Utah? What's your thoughts on Oregon State, Chris?
You mentioned it. We just talked about it a second ago. Oregon State coming off that loss against Washington State. That was a pretty damn good game. Oregon State kind of came back in that game in the fourth quarter there. They made it close, but didn't quite pull it off. But Oregon State's 3-1. They're still rated 19th in the country. I think they're like -3 at home here. So they're favored in this game against the Utah team that I personally like a lot. I know I went against them last week. We saw what happened when I bet against Utah. Hopefully I don't make the same mistake twice, Christian. But, I will say this. DJU, he got outplayed by Cameron Ward last week, Christian. He did. Cameron Ward is a really good quarterback. That kid could sling the ball. But DJ, I don't know. He's been very up and down this year, man. We saw that at Clemson, too, though. That was kind of the history there with him and why they kind of decided to move on and go with Cade Klubnik this year there. But, he's 17 of 34 in that game. Christian had 198 yards. That was it against a Washington State defense that, I'm not saying they're terrible, but they're not elite. They're not Washington. They're not Oregon, right? One TD, one interception. So he's got to be better going forward here. So, but we know Utah's defense is for real. I think Utah has an elite defense. They've had a lot of injuries they're battling, on both sides of the ball, and I'm sure you'll get into that here in a minute. But he's going to have to play much better. Oregon State's got to get off to a better start. They got off to a slow start last week. They're going to have to get out ahead of this one in Utah. We know what Utah can do. I will say this. This game is played in Corvallis, and that is one of the toughest places to play, man. It's up there in the top 10 list. We've seen the history of Oregon State is upsetting really ranked teams up there. We've seen them knock off Oregon in the past. USC, even the Oregon State team that might have 5 or 6 wins that year ends up beating a team that's rated in the top 10. We've seen it before. So I like that Oregon State's playing there. I think this is why they have the -3 on them right now. But Christian, let me know about Utah here, man. I feel terrible. We have a lot of Utah fans on this show. I went against them last week. I feel like an idiot because I took UCLA. They played a hell of a defensive game in that game. I know Cameron Rising didn't play. I don't know again if he's going to play this week.
Yeah, you said it best, Chris. They're coming off a 14-7 win against a red-hot UCLA team. The team is surviving without Cam Rising, right? That's probably the best way I can describe it. They're surviving. Nate Johnson, the quarterback, kind of taking over for him. Wasn't overly impressive, right? He was 9 of 17, 117 yards, and a touchdown. Here's the good news, though, if you're Utah, all right? And that's UCLA's defense is much tougher than Oregon State's, right? Just looking at it, you can go look up the statistics if you want to. Much tougher defense, in my opinion. But hats off to Utah's defense. Speaking of defense, hats off to Utah's defense, Chris. I mean, they got 7 sacks last week. 7 sacks and a couple of turnovers in the game. So, you're doing something right whenever you can affect them that much. Utah's defense currently ranks 10th in the country right now in total defense. I think if Utah has a shot to win on the road against an Oregon State team coming off of a loss, they're going to have to play much better on offense, obviously, and the defense is going to have to limit the ukulele, as we like to say. Ironically, UCLA's offense ranks 28th in the country, and Oregon State's ranks 26th. So very similar in terms of production. Chris, what's your final score predictions for this game?
Dude, this is one of the toughest games, and there's a lot of tough games this weekend to try to predict. Man, I bet a lot, but I'm not making the mistake in going against Utah. I know I made some of our fans upset last week that I took UCLA. Give me Utah, and I'm calling this one right here. 24-21. Give me Utah at Corvallis, 24-21 over Oregon State in overtime. Mark my words.
Chris, did you like trains growing up as a kid?
They're all right. What type of train we talking about here? I don't know where this is going.
Well, it doesn't matter what kind of train, really that we're describing. It just matters sometimes when you're into trains, which I never was. But sometimes you got to know when to get off and when to keep riding. And let me tell you right now, I'm going to keep riding the train, son. Utah 28, Oregon State 24. Let's go.
Close. All right, let's go, baby. Let's go.
We are. All righty, moving right along. USC versus Colorado, Chris. I'll start us off here with a little bit of USC hype.
Let's go.
I mean, look, a lot of people have got a lot of different things to say about USC. I mean, they've done exactly what they've needed to do up until this point on the offensive side of the ball. They're ranked 3rd in total offense. As you look at this matchup against Colorado, Colorado currently ranks 125th in the country in total defense. Caleb Williams, just for reference here, has 1,200 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions.
Wow. He's playing to win another Heisman is what he's doing.
I'm telling I don't know if you could say quietly. There's a lot of hype around a lot of different guys in the country, but he's just chugging right along, man. Just doing what he needs to do. I mean, that's what you got to do. On defense, the Trojans rank 70th in total defense, Chris, in the country. But here's where I think that stat kind of is a little bit, innocuous, if you will, right? I mean, they allowed a 3rd-string quarterback at Arizona State to slice them up last week for 28 points and 353 yards. That to me is where things get tough. We've seen them not just against Arizona State, but against other teams, kind of like who was it? San Diego State or something? San Jose State, yeah.
A bunch of points on them too. Yep.
I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, we've seen that Colorado can do on the offensive side of the ball, so it's going to be interesting to see how they stack up, in this one. I think USC, they're going to have to get some stops, which again, it's going to be a really interesting game. Not let that Colorado atmosphere, both the fans and the altitude, get to them. I mean, this to me, Chris, almost kind of feels like a trap game. Because, here's the other side of it. We know at least once a year, Lincoln Riley-led teams stumble and end up losing a game they shouldn't. Happens every year. But, Chris, I want you to talk to me about Colorado. Tell me what we need to know about Colorado.
I actually have a couple questions to your nice long novel there. What's innocuous mean? I don't even know what the hell that means. I have no idea. I'm a simple redneck here from Nebraska. What's innocuous mean?
I'm using my Stephen A. Smith words today, Chris.
Okay, a little bit too
so
much.
All right. We'll leave it right there.
All right. Moving on. You said it best. Lincoln Riley does slip up, but it ain't gonna be this week, man. And I'm going to talk about the Buffs, man, here. And their offense is really, really good, right? We know that. We know what they are. They're all over the media. I'm not going to get into all that. They're 3-1. They got just skull drug across the field against Oregon last week, and Dan Lanning, Bo Nix, those guys, everybody just lit them up, man. It wasn't even funny. They shouldn't have. If they didn't, Oregon could have kept them and held them to 0 points if they wanted to. They were playing 2nd and 3rd stringers in the second half. That's how bad that game was. But good thing is you can bounce back here in college football. This is how it works, right? Oregon outgained, though, in that game, Christian. You spoke about the defense. Oregon outgained Colorado 522 to 199 total yards. I mean, that's an absurd amount. And Colorado is giving up 475 yards a game. I know I'm supposed to be sitting here trying to tell you why Colorado is going to win this game. There's not much to talk about positives as far as Colorado coming into this game. Yes, they can put up points on offense, but not at the rate that USC can, right? I mean, USC and Caleb Williams, you spoke about him. This guy is a machine. He is throwing 3, 4, 5 touchdowns a game. Colorado is giving up that in the air every time they play somebody. Offensively, though, for Colorado, if they want a shot in this game, they got to protect the damn quarterback. Shedeur Sanders is going to get killed. He's been sacked, I swear, like 27 or 30 freaking times already this year. I think Shedeur Sanders is a top 10 draft pick either this year or next year whenever he decides to come out. I think he's really, really good. But you got to protect the kid, man. I mean, you got to. Colorado's shown that they haven't been able to do that. It's got to be better this game. I know USC's defense is not as great as some of the elite defenses out there, but they're going to have to do a better job regardless. The other thing here with Colorado, you're averaging only 55 yards a game on the ground. It's just, they're so one-dimensional. I think Oregon knew that coming into the game last week, put pressure on Shedeur, send the house. It was over in the first quarter. Let's be honest. So in this game, Christian, I'm going to go right into my prediction, man. It's hard to talk about a lot of positive things about Colorado. They don't have any Travis Hunter. Even if he did play in this game, I'm going to say this. I know it sounds bold. I don't really think it matters. He's not an offensive lineman. He's not a defensive lineman. And that's Colorado's biggest struggle this year has been up front. Give me USC in this game, 52. Give me Colorado, 20.
Ooh, man, that is a bold take. I think there's something to be said on the road. Altitude's got to play a part into this, right? I mean, isn't that a thing, right? The altitude of Colorado, a lot of people struggle when they go there. I think that'll play into it, and this is what I think. I think, before I give you my final score prediction on it, Chris, I'm just going to say this.
Yeah.
I think it'll be surprisingly close at the half, and then I think USC is going to pull away late in this one.
Okay.
Give me USC 41, Colorado 31.
Wow. Okay, you got a little bit of a shootout there then in Boulder. Okay, I like it, though. I like it. I mean, we obviously don't consult about these, so I like it.
And I think part of that, too, is just because I'm a lot higher on Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks defense than I am about USC's defense. I mean, dude, they gave up. Here's the thing. It might even be closer than that, right? I mean, this game could get in the 50s and 60s. Colorado very well could put up 40 points in this game because look at what Arizona State did to them. Look at what San Jose State did to them.
I think, though, Lincoln Riley, though, for this game, I think they were preparing more for this one just to kind of do what – I'm not comparing Lincoln Riley and Dan Lanning. I know Lincoln Riley's been around longer. He's the highest, paid coach, one of them, everybody talks about him all the time. But I think that he was kind of looking forward to this. And I hope he takes a page from Dan Lanning's book and just shuts Colorado up in this game personally. That's just me. But I don't think – I just think with Shedeur getting sacked, and I just looked up the stat. He's been sacked 23 times, so I was a little bit high there. But still, that's an amazing amount of sacks given up, Christian. I know it's USC, but USC, I think their defense is a little bit better than it was last year. That's not saying much, but Colorado's so one-dimensional, bro. Like they just can't run the football. They're second to last in the country. I mean, it is crazy to me. So my score differs a little bit from yours, obviously. I think it'll be a closer game than the Oregon-Colorado game, 100%, though, man. I definitely think that.
Mike in the chat. Let's go.
So, Mike?
Moving right along here. Don't worry. We've got about 2 previews to go until the one you're going to want to see here, Mike.
Yeah, no shit.
Looking at Florida versus Kentucky here, Chris. What are your thoughts on the Wildcats?
Woo! Man, I was high on Kentucky this year. Christian kind of thought I was a clown. Christian's the SEC expert over there. But they are 4-0, man. But here's the problem. They've only beaten, Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron. They beat Vandy last week. A little closer there at the end than I like. Kentucky was off. I think they were up like 21-0 in that game. At one point, they won 45-28, I believe, though. The big question here, though, this is a very interesting game. It is. And everybody knows I have no love for Florida. But this is a very, very interesting game. Kentucky's offense versus Florida's defense, right? Florida's got a pretty good defense this year. I think we could all agree on that so far. This is going to be the best defense Kentucky's faced all year up until this point, hands down, bar none. We get that. Florida's only allowing I think like 250 yards per game, and they're only giving up 13-5. That's pretty good for Florida. They played Tennessee and they played Utah. Those are two, let's be honest, at least decent teams. We're not talking about Tennessee right now, but we will talk about Utah. Kentucky's averaging 38 a game, so something's got to give here. If in this game, is it Florida's defense? Is it Kentucky's offense? We're going to find out here. Can Kentucky create turnovers against the Graham Cracker, my boy from Wisconsin? UK leads the nation, Christian, in 8 takeaways. They're good at creating turnovers, man. I think they can do that in this game. I truly, truly do. They also lead the country in 3 defensive touchdowns. There's only one other team in the country that does that. That's Coastal Carolina. So Kentucky does. When they get a turnover, man, they do something with it. I like their defense. I love a Stoops-led team. I think they're physical. I know Kirby Smart at Georgia talks about Kentucky's kind of one of their games that they play in very physical. That's one thing I love about Kentucky this year. Christian, tell me why I'm wrong here and talk about Florida and your boy Graham Mertz.
I gotta do Florida fans a little bit of justice. I kind of did a lot of research into Florida on this one. Chris, look, this is going to get a little lengthy, so just buckle up.
All right.
Florida has been a very weird team this year, right? They lose to a really good but really banged up Utah team. They blow out an FCS school the next week, capitalize on a rebuilding Tennessee, and then they come out and they came out flat against Charlotte, and they won that game 22-7 against Charlotte.
Who was that?
Charlotte. I'm pretty sure that was a novel the children read, right? Charlotte's Web? They almost got caught in that web, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, look, currently Florida ranks 5th in total defense, and we'll see that put to the test against Tennessee's offense. I mean, it's the best passing offense they've seen yet, right? And I know a lot of Tennessee fans might get a little bit hyped about Kentucky, that or triggered. Yeah, saying Kentucky's the best passing offense they've seen yet. Tennessee ranks 73rd, while Kentucky ranks 47th in passing offense this year. Okay. To be fair, Chris, look, I'm going to say this: I've been pretty impressed with Florida's defense this year. I mean, Here's the thing: they've given up some plays here and there, but who hasn't, right? Who hasn't this year? Their offense, kind of jumping back to them, they rank 55th in total offense, and against Charlotte's 105th ranked defense, they only put up 22 points, 1 touchdown, and 5 field goals. Might I add. Field goal kicking's getting a lot better. So if you want to look for signs of improvement, the field goal kicker getting his work in. Look, Mertz has been efficient, but he needs to step up. And going into SEC play, man, I know what they did against Tennessee, but he may not get lucky, and he may run into some teams that don't turn the ball over in plus territory for him. And here's the thing, dude. He's got to start hitting some home runs, and he can't just settle for singles or bunts. You know what I mean? To use a baseball term here. At some point, you're going to have to be able to throw the ball down the field, and you're going to have to get a 3 or 4 touchdown game. You can't just settle for 285 yards and 1 touchdown. It's not going to work in the SEC. We see it happen way too many times. Look, Kentucky has the number 20th ranked defense in the country, and the game's at Kentucky. I'll tell you what, Chris. If Florida wins on the road against Kentucky, I'm going to start believing that hype. I'll get on. I'm not going to get on the Florida train, but I will start believing the hype a little more, and I'll take Florida being maybe a player in the East this year.
Okay. All right.
I'll give you my
score,
final.
then, babe guy. Give me the score.
Give me Florida 21, Kentucky 31.
Woo, we're close. I got Florida at 20, Kentucky at 27. Roll Wildcats, baby.
Daniel jumping in the chat here says Kentucky by 24.
Love it.
Man,
let's go.
That would be pretty hyped if they beat them by 24. I don't know. I feel like that. There was like a lot of weird stats about Florida where they've beaten Kentucky, so many times. I know that was kind of floating around a couple years back, and then Kentucky finally pulled off an upset at home. And it's just been really weird, and it's been a weird dynamic there.
So this is a question I want to ask you, Christian. What is Kentucky? Because they really haven't played anybody. Florida's played a good Utah team, as we both agree on. They played Tennessee. Yeah. I don't know what Tennessee is. I know you were a little bit higher on them this season. I was. But what is Kentucky? You know what I mean? Like, I think we're going to kind of find out right this week. I mean, are they good? I like Stoops. You know my feelings about him. What's your thoughts?
I really don't know enough yet, right? I mean, Vandy, I watched some of that game, and Vandy started to kind of make a push, I feel like late.
They did.
I don't know enough about Kentucky yet. I think, like you said, Stoops is a damn good coach there for him. He's kind of been a middle of the pack SEC coach, which, if you're a basketball school named Kentucky, and you can do anything of relevance in the SEC as far as football is concerned, you're probably going to stick around for a while. To me, with Devin Leary and what he did at NC State, you want to push the ball vertically and don't be afraid to run the football. I mean, that's the mistake I think we saw Tennessee make, right?
Yeah.
Where they kept trying to throw the ball downfield on Florida, and they just couldn't connect on it. And then finally, by the time they decided let's run the ball, they were already down by multiple scores.
Yep, I agree.
So
good point.
Just don't do inept coaching shit. And I think they've got a really good shot at home to beat Florida. That's all it comes down to. I'm not trying to sound like a Florida hater. I know we've got a lot of Florida fans on the show. They'll jump in and out depending on if Florida wins this game. If they lose the game, then we may not ever see him again.
Gator swag, dude. He's on suicide alert. You don't know.
Well, we'll take a look at this. We'll segue right into UGA versus Auburn, the preview. Boy. I know I'm a massive Dogs fan, but I wanted to flip it around here a little bit. I think it does it a little bit of justice. Don't look at anything biasly, right, Chris? Auburn. I'll start off with Auburn here. 3 points. That's what Auburn's offense managed to put up offensively against Texas A&M. Look, Auburn currently ranks 83rd in total offense. I mean, they have a legit quarterback controversy coming into this game, right? This is their toughest matchup all year. Maybe even the entire year, right? I mean, Hugh Freeze isn't 100% sold on Peyton Thorne, as he had 44 passing yards and negative 34 rushing yards in that game against Texas A&M. I know their defense is pretty damn good, but I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care if you're Iowa, I don't give a shit who you are, there is no reason to be stuffed with under 100 passing yards, or just 100 total yards for that matter, in any game you play. That's just not at this level. Robbie Ashford had 4 yards passing. So you tell me how that's going to work against the number 1 team in the country and the number 17th team ranked defensively. And the reason why I say that is kind of important. Kirby, I don't think, has finished much higher than like 16th or 17th any year at Georgia. So that defense, that's one thing I give Kirby a pass on, right? We give certain coaches passes on things. The defense, they could put a bunch of middle schoolers in there, and I'll still trust Kirby to have a top 25 defense. Kind of like old Heupel at Tennessee. He's going to have good offenses, right?
Absolutely.
Here's the thing, Chris. With all that being said, Auburn has to be able to find continuity on offense. I mean, it's at home. Yes, it's against a reloading Georgia team. I mean, on defense, they don't look terrible. They ranked 24th in the country, and against A&M, they gave up 402 yards. The biggest question to me in this game, Chris, is going to be, how does Auburn's defense limit Carson Beck of Georgia? I mean, it's his first real test. It's on the road. Georgia currently has the 64th best rushing offense in the country, and they're really banged up in the running back room. If Auburn is going to win this, they need to capitalize on the hometown advantage, get momentum early. They also need to put Georgia away by scoring touchdowns and praying that Georgia doesn't come out flat in this one, Chris. Tell me about my Dogs.
Woo! Let's go. No, I know you're trying to do everything you can for the Auburn man over there, but it ain't going to matter in this one. Georgia's 4-0, right? They played UT Martin, Ball State. South Carolina was a close game. They were down 14-3 at halftime. We know what happened the second half. The Dogs, if you will, as Christian calls them, just total absolute dominance in the second half of that game to pull it out 24-14. They beat a UAB team with, nobody on it last week, 49-21. But I will say this, though. I'm high on Georgia this year. Christian obviously is not probably even as high as I am, believe it or not. Georgia has yet to play, and I think Christian would agree, a complete game this year for 4 quarters. They just haven't. I've watched enough Georgia football this year to realize that they just haven't put one all together. So that's kind of concerning if you're a Georgia fan this year. I would assume you want to see it put all together. This is now officially basically SEC play starting. So I'll say this though, Christian touched on it. You touched on it. I knew it was going to be brought up. This will be Carson Beck's first career road start at Auburn at the Barn. I mean, this place is a tough place to play. It doesn't matter if they're 3-9, it doesn't matter. You go there. That we've seen Auburn pull upset after upset. They're kind of like Oregon State in that way at home. They're just one of those teams there. The crowd's going to be fired up. The fact that they lost last week to A&M, I don't think it'll probably be as hyped up, but they're going to still be hyped up. If they would have beat A&M last year, I think this place would be going crazy because they would be undefeated going into this game against Georgia. But Georgia also has owned Auburn the last 20 years. I think it's 16-3 or 4 or something like that for Georgia. Georgia has a really good record, especially the last 20 years against Auburn and kicking their ass. UGA, I talk about their defense. Christian touched on them. There's not much more I can add to that. They're top 10 in yards allowed this season. Nothing new there. Kirby Smart, man, this guy could go coach a bad football team and name any bad football team defensively and give him a year and he gets them turned around. It doesn't matter what they do. Kirby Smart that's why I think he's currently the best coach in the country. So I see nothing changing here is Auburn's offense, honestly, in this game is borderline pathetic. When you're playing Robbie Ashford, that's all I need to say. I've seen enough of Peyton Thorne to tell you guys at Michigan State how bad he was. Now you're playing Robbie Thorne. So I don't know what's going on there. You don't want a quarterback controversy going into a game like this in Georgia, who's rated number 1. I can tell you that. Christian, I want to hear your prediction first, and then I'll give you mine.
Yeah, so give me Georgia 31, Auburn 17.
Wow, you got a little closer than I expected. Give me the Bulldogs 38, Auburn 3.
Man.
Yeah,
Chris,
I had to do it.
Speaking of quarterback controversies,
Yes, sir.
There's a certain game being played this weekend. Not the game, but it is a game in Lincoln, Nebraska, between Michigan and Nebraska. Chris, what are your thoughts on the Michigan Wolverines?
4-0. I've watched a lot of Michigan this year. Here's the problem. Really haven't played anybody, right? Eastern Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, a couple, group of Power 5 school or a group of 5 schools there, if you will. But they played Rutgers last week. Christian, we talked about this a little bit last week on the show. Rutgers scored right away in that game, got up 7-0 early on the Wolverines. But then Michigan did what Michigan does with their number 1 defense in the country. Final ended up being 31-7. So they pulled it out. And I don't think Rutgers was undefeated coming into that game, by the way. I don't think Rutgers is a bad Big Ten team this year. I don't think they're elite, but I don't think they're a bottom feeder either. Here's the big thing with Michigan. I'll give you some stats here, guys. Defensively, he's only allowing 5.8 points per game. That is number 1 in the nation by 3 points, actually, believe it or not. It's hard to score against Michigan. Now we can also bring in their schedule and who they played. But they're also only giving up 230 yards per game, which is very impressive to me. That's 3rd in the country. They don't give up yards. They don't give up points. The defense of Michigan's always been pretty elite since Harbaugh's been there. Here's the big thing. They're going to be playing a team here in Nebraska who is rated in the bottom 25 as far as points per game, yards per game. This fits very well, in my opinion, for the Michigan man. It really does, coming into it in Lincoln this weekend. But I will say on the flip side, Michigan has not looked elite so far on offense. J.J. McCarthy, he is completing 80% of his passes, but he's been turnover prone as well. He's had some costly turnovers in some games where, I don't want to say costly, I guess, necessarily, but I mean, just turnovers that he shouldn't be making. This guy's been playing a lot of football. He was their starter last year. He's played enough football to not be in turnover, not turning the ball over against Rutgers. He had a couple against Bowling Green. It's not working there. I don't know what's going on with JJ. He can run the ball too, but he needs to be a little more protective of the football offensively, Christian. The big thing with Michigan, we know about the running backs, right? Edwards, Corum. These 2 guys are probably the 2 best running backs in the country on the same team. They're probably 2 first-round draft picks next year, to be completely honest with you. They got 91 carries this year for 460 yards and 8 TDs. That's 5 yards a carry, guys. That's pretty damn good in the world of college football. So my question is, can Michigan put up enough points against Nebraska defensively, who's only giving up like 18 points a game? Something's got to give in this game. Christian, I'm going to kick it over to you for my Huskers and let me know why I'm wrong.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, here's the thing. Nebraska, at some point, they need a big statement win. I mean, and who would be better to beat than the number 2 ranked Michigan Wolverines, right? I'm just gonna come right out. Nebraska. I'll start with the bad here first for you, Chris. Nebraska ranks 13th in the country in turnovers. 13th in the country in turnovers. So only 12 more teams in the country turn it over more than Nebraska, basically, if you don't know what that stat means. The passing offense has looked terrible, at just about every level, by the way. I mean, linemen can't hold blocks. Wide receivers can't create separation. Quarterbacks are staring down reads. It's been pretty anemic. Now, that one, I do know that word, not to use a Stephen A. Smith
I actually know what that
line.
means, too, believe it or not.
They rank 127th in passing offense, Chris. Yeah. A lot of people, they've written off Jeff Sims, and it's assumed that Heinrich Harburg is the starter. But I have a feeling we haven't seen the last of Jeff Sims yet, Chris. I have a very strong feeling that we haven't seen the last of him. Huskers' rushing offense, definitely the best part of this team, but Michigan ranks 12th in the country in rush defense, or rushing yards allowed, I should say. So if Nebraska gets in a hole early, they're going to have to throw the ball, which we'll see how that goes. Michigan's number 7 in passing yards allowed. So they're pretty good at stopping the pass as well. The point is Michigan's defense, very, very good team, right? We know that. Nebraska's defense, pretty good as well. I mean, they currently rank first in rushing defense. And they're going to need to prove it once again, as they can't let Michigan's uberly talented running backs gash them. You said it. You touched on J.J. McCarthy, right? They rank 69th, in passing offense.
Yeah.
Right? And here's the thing. Nebraska ranks 101st in the country at passing yards allowed. I mean, they just need to pray that Michigan has the worst game of their season and that the offense comes alive at home to have a shot in this one, Chris. Let me get your thoughts. We'll jump into some of the comments.
No, and before I give my prediction, you're exactly right. We talk about this Nebraska defense all the time. I'm a Nebraska man. I would love to see them compete and keep this game close. I'm worried on both sides of the ball. I'm worried that the fact that we ain't going to be able to move the ball offensively, therefore putting our defense on the field 80% of the time. And I don't care whose defense you got, whether it's the 85 Bears, the 21 fucking Georgia Bulldogs, it doesn't matter. I'm worried. Nebraska's offense is going to hurt their defense in this game. Give me Michigan 33, Nebraska 6.
You said Michigan 33, Nebraska 6?
Yes, I did.
God, son, I got Michigan 34, Nebraska 7.
Holy shit. Where's the money at? Let's go bet now. Let's go.
We covered each other there.
Wow.
For sure. All right.
Yeah, let's answer a question. Because Seth says something about Wisconsin on a bye. Now I can have finally a calm weekend. Yeah, I feel your pain at times, man. I truly get it, because I'm going to wish we had a bye after this Michigan game before we go play at Illinois next week. Trust me. That's how I feel.
At least you're not Iowa. I hear, whatever the next bye week Iowa has, they still won't have more than 50 yards total offense, dude. Still struggling to get first downs even in the bye week.
Oh, woo! And that's that boy Cade McNamara who got beat out by J.J. McCarthy last year, Christian. This guy was supposed to be a savior over there offensively for Brian and Kirk Ferentz, man.
It is. By the way, Daniel said Georgia by 32. You got to love it. If they win by 32, might have to come on here with a truffle shuffle or something. We got to get it going.
I said Georgia by 35. Let's go.
Mike says, don't forget they're playing the number 1 rushing defense. Well, we touched on that a little bit.
That passing defense, though.
That's the thing. Seeing Iowa and Minnesota lose was so nice. But here's the thing, right? And that's, I feel better. Okay, let me ask you this question here, Mike. Do you feel more confident that you can stop Michigan throwing the football on you? You might contain the run game, but do you feel confident you can stop them from throwing the football on you? Do you feel more confident about that than you would about Michigan being able to stuff you from running the ball? And let's be honest, dude, Michigan's got some boys in there that play defensive tackle now. that if they get in that backfield, and let's say Anthony Grant gets hurt or gets tired,
Oh my God.
that's the offense, right? Do you feel confident that Sims or Harburg can win this game by throwing more than 25 times?
I'd like to see Mike's answer on this. I know you're going to the game, Mike. I had an opportunity to go as well. I turned it down twice this week because every time I go, the last 6 times I've witnessed losses. So I'm not going. I'm hoping for the Nebraska man, and we can keep this thing close, Christian. But that's a very good point, though, and that's what I'm worried about, man. I Nebraska. The other thing is, dude, running the ball 20 times a game with your quarterback. I've been saying it all year. Isn't going to get it done. That's why Sims has been beat up. Harburg's been beat up. We have no weapons on the outside. We don't really have much tight end play this year. It's very – this is 2021 all over again, man.
Well, and you got to think, too, the last team to beat Michigan last year, if I'm not mistaken, was TCU. And TCU wasn't exactly known as like a run-the-ball-down-your-throat team. They were kind of more of that spread it out, throw it, kind
Quentin
of –
Johnson, baby.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we'll kind of see here. We've got Seth saying, seeing Iowa, Minnesota lose was so nice. Agreed. I mean, but hold on now. But Seth, what does that say about the Big Ten West?
I was going to say, Seth, what do you think about this Big Ten West? I mean, I took Wisconsin to win it. They still look probably, in my opinion, the best team in the Big Ten West. But what's it say about the rest of these schools? Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Purdue, Illinois, fucking Northwestern beat Minnesota last week. I mean, I just haven't seen any impressive play in the Big Ten West, and Wisconsin just doesn't look like, even defensively for you guys, man, it's scary this year. They don't look near as elite as they normally do. It's a joke. I feel you, man. I'm in that boat, buddy. I like that. This guy's a realist. I like it.
He's a realist. I love it, dude.
Yep.
Mike says we'll hit a couple more. We'll jump back into it here. He says, I don't know about throwing, but I can guarantee that we will see stuff on offense we haven't yet. Yeah, and that's the problem. Me and Chris were talking about that before we got on the show. Because I see a lot of coaches do that, right? I mean, how often do you see it where coaches like, hey, we want to hide things going into a game, but here's the problem I have with that. Maybe Chris might have a different take on it.
What's that?
Here, the way I look at it is, even if they were saying, hey, we're gonna hide a bunch of stuff against NIU and La Tech, Louisiana Tech, even the very simple passing concepts, the vanilla passing concepts with Harburg, they just struggled with it. I mean, 50% completion percentage, 105 yards, whatever it was he's had. I mean, even if it was just very vanilla, very simple against those teams, and there was a lot of times too where he would drop back and they would try to set up big down the field throws, he got depleted. Now I understand Prohaska can be in there too, but Prohaska hasn't always been that great either. He's a string bean, is what Chris said. Mm-hmm. It looks like if you morphed me and Chris together and added about 5 inches to our height.
Exactly. Yeah. No, Christian, you're not wrong. I mean, Mike, like I said, one thing I love about you Nebraska fans, you guys are overly optimistic, and I love it. I do. And I would love to see this game be closer than 16.5 points, which is the spread right now. I'd be super pumped up about it. But I just don't see in a world where I think maybe Nebraska can hang around for a quarter and a half, maybe a half. But we have yet to prove this year against Minnesota, who's not good, Colorado, who's not good on defense. We can't put up points and throw out. I don't care about Northern Illinois or La Tech. It's just, to me, this year, have we developed a passing game? Are we competent and confident enough to throw the ball when we get down by 10 or 14 points? I just haven't seen it yet. And I don't know if it happens this week when you're playing a defense like Michigan's. I just don't. And I hope that we're maybe saving some stuff, but I've seen enough, and I studied the wide receiver position a ton. That's what I played in high school and college. We're throwing jump balls to Billy Kemp, who's 5'8", man. I'm just saying, we don't have a big play over 25 yards this year through the air, other than that bobbled Jeff Sims double pass play that was a disaster at Minnesota. Throw that out the window. I was telling Christian about this. We don't have anything down the field, man. And I'm sorry. You look at the country, you look at the elite quarterbacks in the country, all those guys can throw the football, and those teams can throw the football when needed. And that's where I'm really, really worried about Nebraska in this game.
I'll say this to give all the Nebraska men and women hope for this week, because you're going to need it, right? We all need a little bit of hope in our life. If there was one game that Nebraska would wake up and decide to, hey, all of a sudden everything's going to click for us and we're just going to come out and everything's going to be firing, it would probably be against Michigan at home. I mean, it just would. Now, with that being said, I'm a big, like in fantasy football, right? The first 2 weeks I ended up winning because the Dallas Cowboys defense put up 40 points. You know what I mean? They gave me 40 points. I ended up just blowing out some scrub that I played week 1. Right? Week 2, I ended up winning by, I don't know, last second flukes. The person I played against put up 120 points, right? I somehow came back. I was down, guaranteed to lose, and put up 130 points. I say that because I think that if Nebraska plays and keeps this a really close game, which it could be if they do what they need to do, and everything kind of looks right on the defensive side of the ball, and they stuff Michigan, and McCarthy has an off game, and they run the football, and they're able to kind of get out and run what they want to do, I think it can be a closer game, right? Or maybe even if Nebraska can figure out a way to hold on and win, that doesn't guarantee that they don't lose to somebody like Northwestern later in the year. It doesn't. I mean, I could you see a world where Nebraska beats Michigan, turns around and loses to Northwestern? I mean, because I could.
Oh, God. Don't even make me think those kind of thoughts. Don't even do it. Don't even do it. And to answer your question, Mike, can't hang around. I know what you're thinking. I know you think I'm hating on them, but Rutgers held them to 14 points in 2 quarters. Well, the full game is 4 quarters. Rutgers also beat Northwestern the week before and destroyed them. Northwestern beat Minnesota last week. So if you want to play that game, it's like Minnesota beat us. So maybe is Rutgers a better team than us? I don't think Rutgers is a scrub team this year. I truly don't. I think they're right there with us personally. So anyway, thoughts on Carson Beck apparently, though, Christian. What's your thoughts so far through this year with the veteran quarterback back there?
Was he like number 14 in the country?
Yeah, throwing the ball, yards,
and throwing the ball.
Crazy. Yeah.
I here's what I think. I think Georgia's running back room is very banged up. They're super banged up. Super banged up. I think Carson Beck has had to put a lot more on his plate, and I think that's a good thing, right? It's baptism by fire, right? Where you're having to sort of understand, hey, we got walk-ons that are running the ball, we got guys that are really young, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Carson Beck's been asked to do a lot more. So it hasn't looked efficient or as clean at certain points as it should be. It's a new coordinator in Mike Bobo, who's got a whole new team he's going to have to figure out. And I think Georgia's done what they're supposed to do. They've come out in every game, and they've only played one half. In every single game they played, whether it's UAB, South Carolina, UT Martin, or who else did we play? UT Martin or one of those other cupcake games I can't remember right now, right? But every single game, they've only played one half. I think it's a combination of things, and I think Beck will get better with time. Even if, and I'm not a Disney dog, as they say, right? I'm not overly impressed with Beck and this Georgia team yet. But I don't know, like last year against Mizzou, and a lot of games last year, that's the big thing. Last year against some of these teams that you would think, okay, Georgia's going to come out and mop the floor with them. They looked a little flat. I just think, when you're, and I hate it as a fan, I kind of hope at some point, we can kind of get past this. Maybe we lose a game or two, and we get back to thinking, man, I hope we beat so-and-so this week instead of, well, we should beat them, so we'll see. But I think really where I'm going with this is, I know you're saying, obviously, some family is Georgia fans. They haven't been overly impressed. A lot of people haven't been impressed with him or Bobo. I think quietly, though, what they're doing is gaining confidence, and I think that'll play out a little bit better down the stretch there.
Apologize there. I had to let the dogs back in.
Oh, let the dogs back in.
You know how it is.
Dropping the Browns off at the Super Bowl. I get you, Chris.
Yeah, no, they've never been there. Trust me. No. All right, Christian. What's up? What's up next? What we got, my man?
We'll jump into a little Kansas versus Texas. I'll start us off here with Texas. Chris, they're back.
Oh, I hate that word.
No, in all seriousness, though, the Longhorns, they're doing everything they should at this point, right? They beat Bama, survived against Baylor and Wyoming. We've seen lesser teams not or come a lot closer. They're ranked 26. They're ranked 26th on total defense, Chris. 26th in the country on defense. For a Texas-led team, that's pretty damn good considering what they've been. And especially with Sark as the coach, I would have probably not guessed that. Currently ranked 18th in rush defense, and here's the thing. They can stuff a pretty balanced. Here's the thing. Can they stuff a pretty balanced Kansas offense and force Jalen Daniels to beat you throwing the ball? Biggest question for me in Texas in this game. Kansas is ranked 26th in total offense, and their best, and this is going to be the best offense I think the Longhorns have faced this season, bar none. I mean, the game is at home for Texas. Should be interesting. Kansas has a top 25 defense. Longhorns rank 43rd in total offense. A little different than what we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing Texas kind of run the ball with Bijan and just throw it down the field a million times a game and look pretty good. I think the Longhorns, they've struggled to run the ball. They've ranked 67th in rushing offense this year. Chris, Quinn Ewers and the Horns offense can't afford to have a flat game against a top 25 Kansas team, right? I mean, they can't afford to get caught looking ahead to Oklahoma next week.
Yeah, you said it best, man. I'm going to tell you why I think Kansas has got a shot in this game, dude. I know a lot of people laugh when they see the name Kansas, but we don't talk about them near enough. They're 4-0, wins against Missouri State. Illinois, by the way, and they dismantled them 34-23. That game wasn't even close, by the way. If anybody watched it, I did. I lost some money on it. That's why. Moving on, though, they beat Nevada. They beat a BYU team who knocked off Arkansas the week before. So Kansas coming into this thing pretty hot, man. You spoke on it, Chris. You talked about Jalen Daniels. This guy's really good, man. This kid didn't even play the first week of the season. He's 56-75 this year, 705 yards. He's got 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. But he's also got a couple rushing scores. This kid is electric back there, honestly. If you watch him, he reminds me of, and I can't believe I'm saying this, a lesser version of Shedeur Sanders. He makes plays. He extends plays outside the pocket. He's relatively accurate. He keeps plays alive, man. It's actually really fun to watch. They also have a stud in Devin Neal, though, at running back. Kid's got 57 carries, almost 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. And I think it's both KU running backs are averaging over 7 yards a carry. I think it's Daniel Henshaw Jr. is the other back, Christian. 7 yards a pop, man. That's elite. That's good numbers. So, but you talked about it too, Christian. We talk about this too with KU. Their defense is definitely improved from last year, but is it enough against Quinn Ewers and that high octane offense in Texas and that talent, especially that talented group of wide receivers? We talk about them a lot as well. If Kansas wants a shot in this one, they're going to have to put up some points. Daniels is going to have to play his best game of the season. I think he can, because we know Texas's defense is really good, right? They're only giving up, I think, less than 13 points a game, Christian. Texas defense, we've seen them against Alabama, and Alabama, offense probably not elite, but let's be honest, Texas is defense is got a lot of returning starters from last year. They seem to get better and better every week. So I'm going to give you my prediction right off the rip, Christian. Kansas 27, Texas just too much 37.
Give me Texas 35, Kansas 31.
Ooh, God, we're close though. We're close. I like it.
I think it's gonna be a closer game. I mean, somebody, I think it was Seth in the chat was saying it's either gonna be really close or Texas is gonna beat them by 30.
I kind of agree with that, actually.
I do too. Either Texas is gonna get caught like slacking in this one,
Yeah, I agree.
and then they'll figure out a way to maybe. I don't know. That's the Texas thing though? They come out flat and then they don't win these games, right?
Yes, that's been their biggest Achilles heel the last few years.
So I think that Bama win gave them some confidence though. They needed that win to finally say, hey, we got over the hump, right? You see it all the time. Teams are able to figure out a way to beat a big team that they haven't really figured out a way to beat in a long time. Georgia did it. Trying to think who else. Like Penn State this year, if they can figure out a way to beat Ohio State or Michigan. Notre Dame, same thing. If they can ever figure out a way to beat Ohio State, it'll give them that confidence that they need kind of to win the rest of the games and not go 11-2 or
Right.
10-3 or whatever the fuck they're going to end up being. But I think that's the important part of it. So, yeah, Chris, moving ahead here, a couple more games to get to.
Yep, let's go.
LSU versus Old Miss. Chris, what do you think about LSU?
3-1. We know a lot about LSU, right? They had that loss against Florida State where they just completely crumbled in the second half, turn around, beat a Grambling State by basically 100. They just dismantled Mississippi State 41-14. They beat Arkansas last week, and that was one of the most surprising games to me last week. That LSU did just come out there and just dominate them from start to finish, especially Arkansas losing to BYU the week before. But since that loss to Florida State, LSU is averaging, Christian, 530 yards per game offensively. They're throwing the ball a lot more with Jaden Daniels, and he's been playing pretty well, man. Obviously through the air, but we know can do it with his feet. He's been really great. He's got like 14 all-purpose TDs so far this year. He's looked elite. That is going to be a problem for Ole Miss. It really, truly is. They had a problem with Milroe last week. So LSU's defense, this is the question mark for me and Brian Kelly going forward if LSU. And I know you're really high on LSU. I like LSU this year as well. They've been up and down. They're all over the place this year. LSU is known for great defenses. DBU, everybody tells us that all the time. They got all these great defensive ends. All these guys, I know they got talent there without a doubt. But they've looked like a top 10 defense some weeks, and then they look like a bottom 30 defense at times. I don't know why they're so inconsistent, but
it's Cowboys in college.
Yeah, you said it. So I'm going to kick it over to you for Ole Miss, man. I don't have a lot more to say about LSU because LSU in this game to me should be better. They should be the more dominant team in this one personally. I'll kick it over to you for Ole Miss and the old Lane Train, your boy.
Speaking of the Lane Train, my question is how are the Rebels going to respond to a pretty disappointing loss? I'll put it that way, to Bama. I mean, Chris, remember last year when they started off 7-0, only to lose most of their remaining games?
5 out of 6.
Exactly, 5 out of 6. They need a big bounce back game this week against a very tough LSU team, depending on the week that you play them. But Ole Miss's biggest problem over the last couple of years has been their offense going quiet in big games.
You said it.
We all know what Quinshon Judkins and Jackson Dart can do when they're on. I mean, they can copy. Here's my thing, Chris. Can they do what they haven't done in big games? And can they copy what Arkansas did last week, right, on offense and put up over 30 points? That's the question that I need to see. Can they put up over 30 points? On defense, can you limit the explosive plays and contain a very hot and cold LSU run game and force Jaden Daniels to beat you throwing the ball? Right? That's the big thing. Can you limit him in the run game and force him to beat you throwing the football? Rebels are currently ranked 61st in total defense. I mean, the game's at the SIP, and this game has trap written all over it for LSU. However, Kiffin's record versus top 25 teams is 3-5. He's 3-5 versus top 25 teams. I'm going to go ahead with it. Final score prediction, LSU 34, Ole Miss 24.
Well, you know what? Sometimes we have to be different on this show because we just can't agree on everything. That would be boring as fuck. So here I am. No, give me LSU 30, Ole Miss 33 in overtime. Lane Train finally gets his big win against an SEC opponent. Let's go. And I think I probably lost Christian, and that sucks. We'll see if he comes back. Give me LSU by 17, Seth says. I could see that happening too. I don't know, man. LSU is just so, they're so up and down by halves. I watched some of that Arkansas LSU game last week, and it just upsets me. They're a team I bet quite a bit on college football, and they're a team that just every time I bet on them, I don't know if it's me. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but LSU just seems very up and down. They let Arkansas into that game. They shouldn't have. They did. Arkansas is not a great team this year. I thought they would be better, but no, I could see this. LSU could run away with this and prove a point like they did against Mississippi State. That definitely could happen. We all know that. There he is. Just talking to Seth here he says, give me LSU by 17. I told him, hey, that could happen. LSU is just by halves. They're one team up here look like a top 5 team. Next time they play or a half later, they look like a team that's probably bottom 50. I don't understand it, Christian.
Yeah, trying to pick LSU, what they're going to do from week to week is very hard to do. And it's really shocking, honestly. You would have thought, hey, they returned the most production in all of college
Yes.
football. Bama, and a lot of the other teams don't look as good on paper coming out this year. They should have just run roughshod over it. I mean, hell,
You would think.
I think really what I think the biggest thing was is that Florida State game week 1. I think that the way they lost that game, I think it really fucked with their confidence.
Christian, would you say though that almost in that game, we did that game live? It looked like LSU gave up in the middle of the third quarter in that game. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it looked to me personally like LSU just like threw their hands up. I mean, they got just dismantled in that second half. And you're right. I just don't understand how up and down they are with a Brian Kelly team. Usually he shits the bed in the postseason, not during the regular season. You know what I mean? And they've just been very up and down. That Arkansas game last week, Arkansas is not even half the team that LSU is, and they played with them, damn near winning overtime. I mean, it's just surprising as hell to me this year with LSU. They're very hard to predict.
I agree. Let me do this. We'll answer some more questions here in just a second. We're gonna get to the last game here for us.
Real quick, Mike.
Notre Dame versus Duke, the preview. All right, I'll start off here. Duke, they're America's Cinderella team, and they're the team that I picked to upset Clemson week 1. I remember, Chris, we did a segment in the offseason. What was it? That Duke gets, 8 or 9 wins. We're looking, I don't think we said that they would, but I'm telling you, we're looking real dumb right now. Here's the thing. 4-0, coming into a tough matchup against number 11 Notre Dame. At home, it's at home in Duke's home stadium there. Duke pulled away in that Clemson game, and they found some confidence for this season. They've won every game this year by multiple touchdowns. The defense has looked lights out as they're ranked number 16 in the country in total defense, which is really interesting to see how Sam Hartman and Notre Dame respond after a heartbreaking loss to Ohio State, Chris. Offensively, Duke is ranked 49th in the country, going up against a top 10 defense in Notre Dame. They've already played another top 10 defense in Clemson this year, and quarterback Riley Leonard has 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. He only has 2 passing touchdowns. However, the strength of his game comes on being able to run the ball. Jordan Waters, the running back, has 7 touchdowns on the year already, Chris. That's pretty damn impressive.
Absolutely.
This will be the toughest matchup that Duke has seen yet. My thing is, can they hold on for one more upset and keep the dream alive for another week? And then also, how is Notre Dame going to respond on the road after that loss to Ohio State?
Well, I'm going to tell you how they're going to respond here, Christian. Notre Dame 4-1, right? We know what happened last week. Heartbreaking loss. Christian touched on it against Ohio State, where they had 10 men on the field the last 2 plays. I don't know if anybody over there in that Catholic school can count, but clearly not on defense. Moving on, though, that was a close game, right? 0 turnovers, a lot of defense in that game. That was a good game in most people's eyes. But Sam Hartman needs to play better, in my opinion. He's played great up until that game. I didn't think he had a bad game. Notre Dame decided in the second half that they were going to pound the ball down Ohio State's throat, and they did that for most of the game. But Sam Hartman missed some throws, didn't look elite. I expect more out of a kid that's been playing, I swear, for like 18 years back there. He's got a beard like Christian's dad. This guy's been around for a long time. Here's the deal, though. Into this game against Duke, Christian touched on it. Duke's defense is for real. They are good. They're elite. They're a top 20 defense this year, without a doubt. I 100% agree with that. They're going to have to pound the ball with Estime and keep Riley Leonard off the field. Riley Leonard is one of those guys that I kind of gravitate to as a player, just because, just like Cam Rising or Max Dugan last year, he's kind of that type of player, man. You can just tell by the way he plays. He leaves it all out on the field. He's a tough kid. I like what he does. They're going to have to keep the ball out of his hands, man. He's made some big throws. We saw it against Clemson. He makes some big runs. That's just kind of what that kid does. And Duke is very motivated. They're riding the hype right now, and they look good. Both these two teams, though, are almost identical in stats, offensive, defensively. They both average right around 460 yards per game, which is pretty crazy. And they only give up 260 yards per game. So something's going to give in this one. I expect this game to, be super, super close down to the wire. It is at Duke. I think that gives them an advantage in this game. And I think Notre Dame is actually favored by 5 right now, currently, when I looked at the last line. And I'm going to give you my prediction right now. Call me crazy, but give me Notre Dame 28, Duke 24.
Chris,
Oh boy,
I'm going to probably regret doing this. I'm going to probably regret doing this after this.
You're not going against Duke.
Give me Notre Dame 35, Duke 28.
Wow, you went against the Blue Devils finally.
Here's my take on it, right? I think Duke has had a Cinderella start to their season this far, right? If Notre Dame would have held on and beat Ohio State, right? I think this might be a trap game for them. I think the fact that they lost that game, they're going to have to travel on the road here. They're going to be fired up. They're going to be pissed off. And I just think it's going to be too much for Duke. I mean, let's be honest. The first game that they beat Clemson was the first game of the season. It was on the road for Clemson. They were trying to get a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback sort of sync together. And they just, everything that could go wrong for Clemson did go wrong for them.
Turnovers inside the 10-yard line. There was like 3 of them,
And it was like one of those things where you're like, there's some divine intervention going on, and Clemson just, it ain't their night. I think in this one, it goes the opposite way. And I just think that a good Duke team is going to face a legit top 10, a legit top 10 Notre Dame team, and they're going to run into that buzzsaw after a fresh off a loss.
Let me say this, because before I made my prediction, I was doing my research and copious notes, as I always do during the week, like you do. This is the toughest game for me to predict this whole entire slate, and I'm sure it is probably for you, or one of the tougher ones. If Notre Dame would have won last week, would you have picked Duke this week? Because this is the reason why I didn't pick Duke. I figured that Notre Dame had lost that close, heartbreaking at home, just the way that whole thing ended. That's honestly the reason why I lean Notre Dame in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's why I did it. Honestly, that's why I picked Notre Dame. If Notre Dame would have won that game by 1 or 2 touchdowns, whatever have you, whatever they would have needed to do to win that game, I give me Duke in this one. I think it would have been just and we survived versus right. that anger that you get from losing to Ohio State and then have to hear Ryan Day call out, basically the celebrity mascot of Lou Holtz for your team.
I thought he was dead. I didn't know he was
alive. And it's like, okay, so now that's bulletin board material for next year. This is one of those I think this is one of those losses that refocuses you as a team, gets you back on track, and the moment isn't too big for you the rest of the way. We'll see how Notre Dame responds, though.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I just really wanted to know. This was it was our last game we did on our preview tonight. I had such a hard time I was back and forth the entire week about who I'd take in that game. If I was betting that game, who would I take? And I thought, God, if Notre Dame would have won last week, I would have probably said, hey, Duke's going to get this one, Notre Dame coming off the high. Because you see that a lot in college football, right? The ups and downs of college football are crazy compared to the NFL. And it's just like, that's usually what happens. But now I think you said it, the motivation factor. Notre Dame can't afford to lose another game now. They can't if they want to make a playoff. This is do or die. Duke's still in the ACC hunt. Duke's still got, though, the gauntlet of Clemson, Miami, who's looked really good. I don't know if they play North Carolina this year, and I don't know I think they probably play Florida State. ACC's kind of up for grabs with a slew of those other teams other than Florida State. So Clemson's definitely out of it. But, I mean, it's just a crazy rest of the schedule for Duke going on. I got to take Notre Dame in this one.
All right, jumping into some of the comments here. Mike wants to talk about the Skurs again. I like it, dude. He says, here's another Husker question for you. Rule got here in December, and besides film and the little time he had in the spring, he really had no idea how good the players he had or what the needs were. Well, I disagree, because you went out and got a former professional coach who's been around college football for a little bit. I think if you're a coach in the NFL, you know talent when you see it, and you can you're supposed to be able to be able to identify, hey, this kid's good. He's got NFL talent. This is what didn't work at me when we were at Carolina. We're going to be facing, similar talent that's going to one day probably be playing in the league. This is what we need to do. I think that part of the problem, with that line of thought is there's other coaches that have taken over programs in December who have done, frankly, I think more with less.
Yeah. I'm not going to make excuses for Rule. And like I said, I'm not somebody sitting up here saying that he needs to be fired or anything like that. I'm just saying that He turned over a lot of the roster. Okay, a lot of coaches do that. He brought in Satterfield, who's coached at South Carolina. He's been around the block a time or two. I guess my question is, on top of yours, Mike, I mean, I'm not so upset about what he did recruiting wise. I'm upset the fact that we can't move the ball more for 100 yards in a game. That's where I'm trying to figure out, is that more Satterfield? Is it just Rule in the offense that he wants to run this year, which we know his first years at Temple and Baylor, he's only won 2 or 3 games. He's been horrible his first year. Is that kind of looking that way to me anyway? I know not you, but to me, it looks like that's where Nebraska's headed this year. I question a lot about some of the players he's brought in. A few of them I have, because what does he really want to do? I don't know. If you're trying to go run heavy, Christian, we talked about this. Does run heavy, and I mean by run heavy, running the ball 80% of a game, work anymore? Yeah. I don't think it does. Not in the landscape of college football.
Well, I don't think it does either. I mean, I think only very select few teams can do it. A lot of things have to kind of bounce your way. There's so much that plays into it. And there's just so much that plays into it. As far as what you want to do, being run heavy or passing the ball. Hold on one second real quick, Chris.
Yeah. Seth, I'll answer your question real quick. We'll go back to Mike here in a second. But Seth, I'll answer your question here. Yeah, we did do the Florida-Kentucky talk. I took Kentucky. Christian also, I think, took Kentucky. But close game, though. That game's going to be close. I'm not betting on that game.
Getting back to what we were talking about as far as, sorry about that. The dog was out, man. The dogs are loose here in this household. What we were talking about, though, is you were asking me as far as teams that primarily run the football. I think there's teams that do it, like Michigan, even with J.J. McCarthy. They primarily, Penn State. I mean, they figure out a way. But here's the problem. They figure out a way to get these young quarterbacks developed. I mean, you got to remember, Heinrich Haarberg, this isn't his first year on campus. Jeff Sims, this isn't even his first 2 years playing Power 5 football.
Yeah.
He's played top 25 defenses. And in worse offenses, from what I would consider, right? I mean, legitimately, Jeff Collins and Georgia Tech they took over that program when they were running the triple option under Paul Johnson and had to transition that away. And he looked better at Georgia Tech a couple years removed from that than I think he does at Nebraska, who last year, granted, Whipple's not on the sidelines, but you get a coach that you feel pretty good about in Matt Rule and his history to be able to turn programs around, with a lot better talent. It's just, it's one of those things where something's not clicking, right, on all levels. I haven't seen receivers, and it's so tough, right? Because it's something as small as if the offensive line finally holds up, right? If the offensive line finally is able to hold up and get you time to throw, and a receiver shortcuts a route or they overextend a route, and let's say they're supposed to run a 7-yard out route, right? 7 yards, bang, I'm out. I got to have precise, clean footwork. I'm going to be on a line. This is what I'm going to do. And they run that route at 6 yards instead of 7, or they run the route at 8 or 9 yards instead of 7. It throws everything off. That half second too early, that half second too late is the difference in all this stuff. And it's something that you should be able to get down and coached and make sure everybody's precise with what they're doing, at least against some of the teams they've played, right? Within 6 months, right? Within 6 months. Maybe the spring, I can give you that. They looked better in the spring against what's supposed to. Here's the other thing that baffles me, right? And Chris and I talked about this. If Nebraska's defense is all they're cracked up to be, why does the offense look so bad against what's terrible defenses? I mean, Colorado's ranked 100 and something in the country in total defense, and Nebraska put up how many? They put up 14 points on them.
Yeah, that's my thing, though. So you talk about that. I'll play devil's advocate in the same sentence that you're doing. Well, then why are we scoring 14 points against Colorado? People go, oh, but we beat ourselves. We turned the ball over in penalties. Okay, but who's that on? It's not Matt Rule. Matt Rule's not the guy turning the ball over out there. It's Jeff Sims. Jeff Sims. What has Jeff Sims done at Georgia Tech, Christian? That's His whole career has been turnovers. just sporadic play at times. That's what I mean. I'm a big component of what have I seen lately and what have I seen from a guy in 3-4 years in college football. And I know we're talking about Jeff Sims here, and I know he's not the starting quarterback, but also I got to tie that into, okay, well, Satterfield, they pretty much ran him out of South Carolina. He comes over here because he couldn't run an offense over there with Spencer Rattler. And I think, Christian, you and I would both agree Spencer Rattler can throw a football.
Oh, he can.
He looked really good in the first half against an elite Georgia defense. My point is this is my problem with Nebraska. I think it's not just one thing is wrong offensively. I think it's a multitude of things. I think it's the pass blocking, that they can't get receivers open because they don't have an elite receiver this year. I think Harburg is, he was on campus last year, but he hasn't shown that he can really stretch the field. There's so many issues with Nebraska that it's hard to place it in one spot. But that's my point. It's like, that's why I don't understand why people keep coming on and telling me downtown Lincoln every day that Nebraska's still going to win 7 or 8 games this year, because it's not happening. It's not. We're not beating Michigan. You guys can chop it up all you want, man, but it's not happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, and it's not to bag on him. The secondary question to that is, do you see our offense and defense getting better next year since he's going to have a full season?
It has to be.
I would say, well, here's the only thing, right? If the defense sometimes, and I can't compare it to, I'm going to kind of compare it to other coaches that have been here more recently. 2021, it was the same thing, wasn't it? Where we got to figure out a way to put up 30 points a game. And if we can just do that, we're going to go from a 3-9 team to at least a 9-3 team, right? At least a 9-3 team. And then what happened last year? The defense, I think everybody put so much of an emphasis on defense, and they tried to get so cute about doing shit, right? That kind of backfired. Where the offense now could put up 30 points a game because you had Casey Thompson, you had Trey Palmer, right? But and you had, thank God, Grant and A.J. Allen and Yant and some of those guys kind of bailing things out. But then it just, the defense, man. This year the defense looks good and the offense looks terrible. Next year, and that's the thing. That's the thing that's so frustrating. I'm learning and have continued to learn about Nebraska football. And Chris, how many times have I told you this? If Nebraska could just play mediocre on both sides of the football, year in and year out, they would probably be competing with Wisconsin.
That's
I would say.
And the Big Ten West, as weak as that conference is, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
I agree. And Mike, I want to answer this question while we're on Nebraska, because I don't want to sit here and talk about it for an hour. Is you said here? Okay, here's another question: do we have to beat Michigan to become or not beat Michigan to become bowl eligible? We have 2 wins. So say we lose to Michigan. Who else on the schedule that you think that we're getting 4 more wins from? I want to hear your thoughts on which teams you think that we're actually better on. And you can look at paper, but I mean, hypothetically speaking, throw those teams at me. And Christian, we watch a lot of football over here, and not just Nebraska. That means if we lose to Michigan this week, we still have to come up with 4 wins going forward with the schedule. The schedule is favorable. But do you think we're better than Iowa? Do you think we're better than Wisconsin? Could you hypothetically say that we're beating Maryland? Just saying.
You're fighting, or sorry, you're not fighting. Jesus, that maybe what we should do is cage match this shit.
Fight ring. Go.
So after the Michigan game, the next game is going to be at Illinois, right? Northwestern, Purdue. Here's kind of where we start getting into. I'll break it down game by game here. Illinois. That's not an easy guaranteed dub.
Not at Illinois.
No, it's at Illinois. Brett Bielema and them. I was really high coming into the season. They're 2-2 right now, same record, but they're figured that to me that might be a toss-up game, right?
So just hop in here, Christian. Their 2 losses are to Kansas, who's undefeated, and Penn State, who's undefeated. Just FYI.
Say that again. Oh,
Illinois.
Sorry.
Yeah, Illinois' only 2 losses, though, this year are to Kansas, who's undefeated, and Penn State, who's undefeated.
Okay, so yeah, that makes it kind of, and they didn't look they didn't look terrible considering everybody that's played Penn State.
Yeah,
I mean everybody that's played Penn State other than like some of the FCS schools, that we've seen, whether it be West Virginia, Illinois, Iowa, have just gotten like a boa constrictor. They've just gotten the life choked out of them in that game.
Yep.
And it's really tough to watch games like that where it's just every quarter they just pull away further and further and further. Because it gives you that false sense of, oh my God, well, we played with Penn State for like a quarter.
Yeah.
So I'm not guaranteeing that as a dub. Northwestern's 2-2 and they beat Minnesota.
So do you really think Nebraska's better than Northwestern this year? That's where I'm getting to all this, and I'm not trying to sound condescending or a dick, but I don't see a single game here where I say, "Yep, chalk that up, mark it off like Northern Illinois or La Tech as a W."
So let's just keep going down the list here. I mean, Purdue 1-3. I'm not sold on Purdue's defense. That'd probably be a game that would be a shootout, I would imagine, just kind of like it was. It is sometimes in years past. Michigan State. I don't want to touch that one with a 4-foot pole because they're 2-2, and I honestly,
So I'll do this. I'll give you 2 back-to-back wins there for Nebraska. I'll say they beat Purdue, whose defense is just grade A trash. And I say you beat Michigan State, who has no head coach, and they just fired Mel Tucker today. That gives us 4 wins. So where's the other 2?
And then at Wisconsin, and then Iowa. And that's going to be the battle of whoever has the best offense, basically.
Winning 2 out of those 3 games?
Syracuse or Clemson. You know what? Ooh, Syracuse, they're undefeated, aren't they?
Whoa, we got a South Carolina guy here?
Damn right.
Holy
Gamecocks.
shit. Maybe let's go. Oh my God.
We'll wrap up obviously with the Nebraska thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll get into that.
Wow. Good question. That caught me off guard. Christian, where do you see 2 wins though for Nebraska as we follow up on them? I mean, do you really think that they can beat Iowa? I agree, but I don't think they're beating Wisconsin, and I don't think they're beating Maryland. I don't think Maryland's pretty elite.
I don't think they'll beat Illinois. I think they'll beat Northwestern, so that gives you 3. Purdue, yes. Michigan State, yes. So that gets you to 5. Maryland, no. At Wisconsin, that'll be an interesting one. Again, you say what?
No way they beat Wisconsin.
Well, I'm not saying they're going to beat them. I'm just saying it's going to be interesting, right? We've seen what Wisconsin's done. They haven't lit the world up. If you're going to beat Wisconsin, it would be Luke Fickell's first year. I'm just trying to think about the politics of it here a little bit. I don't know, man. Here's the thing with Nebraska that I've learned, right, in the last couple of years. You can go through the schedule and say they should win this game, they should win that game, they should win this game, right? Whatever you get, divide it by half. Yeah, because they're gonna beat somebody they shouldn't, and they're gonna lose to somebody they shouldn't. So, give me again. I've got 3 wins. They're gonna be a 5-7
Love it. Yeah, they're not making a bowl game. Okay.
Syracuse or Clemson? Ooh, man.
Syracuse is undefeated, if I'm not mistaken. This is at Clemson, or is this at Syracuse? Actually, I kind of want to know.
Man, let me take a look here.
Yeah,
this is one we kind of glossed over just because
I know Syracuse is undefeated. I'm pretty sure they're still undefeated.
They are. I mean, they've got to be, right? Syracuse.
Yeah. Clemson's 2-2. That lost to Florida State, lost to Duke.
It's at Syracuse.
God, that's a tough question. What's the line on that, man? I might want to bet on that right now. I might do it right now. Fuck it. Syracuse, I know, hasn't really played anybody, if I'm not mistaken. I know they're in the ACC, but
who have they played?
Q's, baby. Yeah, let's pull it up here. Colgate, Western Michigan, Purdue, and Army. Ooh.
Hasn't really been close. I don't know. I don't know what Clemson's going to do this year. That's a tough question because the loss at Duke was very demoralizing. The loss at home to Florida State was probably even more heartbreaking. I think Chris could have trotted out there as a 38-year-old, walked on, and probably won them that game.
Give me Clemson. I don't think they lose 2 in a row.
Now Syracuse does have a history of beating Clemson, though.
Oh, I know. No, I know. Ooh, that's a good. That might be the best question of the night right there. That was from a Gamecocks fan.
From a Gamecocks fan, dude. Hey, man, listen, I wanna just apologize. It has been some tough time. I'm a Georgia fan, dude. I picked South Carolina to beat us this year, and for about a half, I was right, and it's very tough, and it's one of those things where me and Chris on this show, we hate inept football, and we just hate just dumb coaching decisions and shit like that, dude. I mean, we could have probably gone on the chain gang out there and probably got cussed out less by Shane Beamer. I feel as if after that
UNC blaming hot dogs and shit. But I will say this though, me and Christian did make a lot of money off that game by taking the points with South Carolina because I think Georgia was favored, but like 4 touchdowns, something like that. Me and you both jumped all over that. We're like, give me the points in South Carolina. So yeah. All right. What else we got here? All right, come on, drop it in chat. By the way, please, guys, I rarely say this. Please like the video. Please help us out on YouTube. I know that sounds crazy, but it really truly does with the algorithm and all that shit. As we continue to do this, please, so we can bring more people in, like South Carolina Gamecock fan here. I love it. I wish I had a Florida. Where's the Florida man at? He disappears and then he just shows up like a tumbleweed the next week. I don't know where this guy's at.
They're still celebrating beating Charlotte 22-6, I think. Dude.
Okay, all right. Put the crack pipe down. Get back on our show. Let's go.
Well, slowly but surely, we're amassing an army of college football fans, man. We love it. Like I said, me and Chris, we're not biased. I mean, he's a Nebraska fan. I'm a Georgia fan. We don't look at this from that standpoint of, Georgia's the best team or Nebraska's the best. We look at it. We don't look at it like that, right? I think that that's what makes college football so great is anything can happen on any given week, and you're putting money on it. It makes it a little bit funner.
Yeah. By the way, and I know I harp on Nebraska, my own team, probably harder than I actually think I'm way harder than anybody on the fucking internet right now. Currently, have been probably for the last couple of years. Please take it as love, man. I would love to see Nebraska be relevant again. Trust me, more than anybody. So Christian's on the high horse. He's won 2 in a row. The only thing he can do is talk bad about Georgia. That's all he can do because they've been playing perfect football. They're like 29-1 over there in the last 2 years. So, yeah, you had tales of 2 people here in fan bases. So
there's oh my God, dude. There's a SEC short. If you guys don't follow them, go follow SEC shorts. They're pretty funny. They put one out where I think it was like, oh my God, what was it? Who was that? Hold on one second. I gotta look the name up here, but let me just look at this real
while
quick.
He's doing that, drop any questions in the chat, guys. We'll talk about any team. We're not just obviously Nebraska or Georgia fans, as we always say. We follow a ton of college football, more than my girlfriend would like, and obviously more than Christian's wife would like. That's pretty much all we do anymore. South Carolina Gamecock says Georgia's going to beat the shit out of Auburn. I agree. I said it's going to be 38-3. We do predictions on Wednesday nights like this. I don't think Auburn scores a touchdown in this game. I truly, truly don't. I can't believe I'm saying that.
I had to look his name up.
I lost Christian. Lost his internet connection there. He'll be dropping back in here again to post that. But yeah, no, I agree. I do. I think Auburn gets skull drug across the field. Thoughts on Wisconsin's future? Seth says, I was so high, Seth, and we got another guy, Dan, who comes on the show. He's a big Wisconsin truther. He's not on tonight, but I had the same conversation with him last week, and he said the same thing. He said that, what's your thoughts on Wisconsin's future too? And I actually think that you guys are still going to finish with a really good record and win the West this year. I had you guys going 10-2 to start the season. I know you guys got Ohio State for sure, and I can't remember if it's Penn State in that schedule too, but I can't remember. But very, very high on Wisconsin. I think you guys still get it done this year, though. I think that you guys got to look better. I'm not impressed with Tanner Mordecai so far throughout the season. I've been a little off on him. I still think I don't know if he's better than a graham cracker or not. I hope so. But Wisconsin, I still have winning the West 100%.
Thoughts on Wisconsin's future? Well, you know what I've said about him. I think they lost one really good running back, didn't they, against Purdue?
Yeah,
he's done for the season.
Yep. I still think they win the West, though.
I'm kind of hard pressed to fight you on that one. I will say this. This is my unbiased take on Wisconsin. I think that Wisconsin, they haven't looked as dominant as what I'm used to seeing them on defense. I think that's just a lot of the new coaching staff. It's their first year there. They've looked all right. They look serviceable, I would say, offensively. And, I think it's a little bit more of the same, isn't it? I mean, like I'm not going to say like it's, quite the Graham Mertz style there, but it's like in games where you're, if for whatever reason somebody can stuff the run and force you to throw, that's where it gets a little bit more challenging. Or if you get into some of these
Sorry, Christian, to interrupt you there, but no, you're right. I mean, I don't know if Tanner Mordecai's been better than Graham Mertz. I said that before you hop back on there. I just don't. I know you talked about it. We had a big debate, got into it with a bunch of Wisconsin fans this offseason about that. And I don't know so far. I do know just feed the ball to Braylon Allen, though, man. If their defense can improve a little bit, I think they're going to easily win the West. And I mean easily. I just don't see another team competing with them in the West as bad as it's been.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, they've got Rutgers Rutgers on October 7th. Then they play Iowa, Illinois, Ohio State.
Ohio State game will be a tough one.
Indiana, Northwestern, Nebraska, and then Minnesota. I don't know, man. I mean, that's the weird thing about the Big Ten and the Big Ten West this year is it's like trying to play darts blindfolded. You just don't know what week some team's going to decide to show up and end up playing the best game of their life, I feel like. That's what makes it so tough because, I mean, there's no rhyme or there's no reason. Like, there's no reason that Rutgers should have played Michigan super tough, early in that game. There's no reason that, Iowa's offense should only have had 76 total yards against Penn State. Again, we touch on Illinois. I mean, Illinois probably just as easily should have been, in my opinion, they should be 4-0 right now. They're not. Well, 3-1.
Should have beat Penn State, yeah.
Yeah, they probably should have beat Penn State. I mean, Indiana has not. Indiana, I mean, they looked okay.
Played Ohio State close week 1, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. Was that just Ohio State's offense, figuring some shit out? Or, was that Indiana just.
Right.
I have to dig a little more into Indiana. Northwestern, again, they beat Minnesota. I mean, how much. I would have never pegged them to beat Minnesota this year, even in a really weird year. So I don't know, man. I mean, the Big Ten West could Wisconsin go 9-3 this year? Absolutely. Could they mess around and be like last year where we have a repeat of like a 6 or 7 win team ending up being the Big Ten West champion? I think so.
I hope not for the Big Ten West sake, as I'm a truther because I have to be because Nebraska's over here. But like, I don't need to see Purdue at 6-6 make the fucking Big Ten title game again. I hope it's Wisconsin at least or somebody with a winning record, whether it's Iowa or whoever it may be. But yeah, Big Ten West, I still think Wisconsin's the best team.
Our wide receivers have been underwhelming too. By the way, if you play, Chris, you might come out of retirement and go play wide receiver for me. I think I might trot out there and try it a little bit, maybe a little tight end action there.
Well, I did. I mean, Clemson's trying to get a hold of me right now to go kick after that 38-yard field goal I drilled. So, yeah, no, if I got to do that or just go on and go play some wide receiver, 100%, I'll do whatever I need to do at 38 years old, decrepit, bad back.
Harbaugh offered me a cheeseburger to come play left tackle for Michigan.
Oh, that's why he had to sit out these 3 games? Jesus.
Whoa.
How many was it? How many cheeseburgers was it, though, Chris? Don't lie. It was more than one. We know you can eat more than one, big guy.
Let's be honest. You see that movie, Harold and Kumar. It might have been a little closer to that order right there.
Okay. All right.
Well, guys, I think this has been a great Wednesday show. Yeah, again, I think we're going to be back at this Saturday around 7:00, wrapping up college football, and then Sunday morning as well.
Yeah,
absolutely, guys. Just like the Ole Miss has the lane train, come jump on the I-80 boys train, where we don't just stop in the heart of the Midwest country; we go all the way through.
Yep, absolutely, guys. I appreciate you guys coming on tonight. Thanks, Seth. South Carolina guy, you better subscribe. We want to see you. I want to see you back, man. We love getting teams from the East or the West Coast all the time. We got a ton of Pac-12 people that follow us, so love to talk some SEC football. I know Christian does. So thank you guys a ton. Truly appreciate it. Have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you guys Saturday.